Hi, thank you all for joining the Novacoast June Threat Landscape Briefing. We will be doing a Q&A at the end, so feel free to write any questions in there or in the chat, and I will now be handing it off to Bryce.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. Um, as always, we're gonna cover different malware targeting and threat actor trends that we've seen this month, as well as identify proactive measures and mitigations against those. So diving into the threat landscape for the month of June, the landscape this month is genuinely a bit unusual. We don't typically have three concurrent high priority patch stories from three completely different sources, but that's what we're looking at. Two data points to contextualize from this slide. First, the Chrome Zero Day. This is the fifth actively exploited Chrome Zero Day of 2026. Uh, Halfway into the year, and we've already exceeded Chrome's full zero-day count from several recent years. The browser is no longer a peripheral concern. It's one of the most consistently exploited surfaces, and it sits inside every endpoint in your environment. Second is the nightmare eclipse situation. A single security researcher has decided that Microsoft's vulnerability disclosure process is unfair to researchers and is responding by publicly dropping Windows zero-day exploits. 6 0 days in 6 weeks. Microsoft responded by threatening legal action, and the researcher responded by promising an even more impactful release on June 14th, which is this Sunday. We've never seen an individual sustain this level of pressure on a major vendor's vulnerability response, and we're likely going to see copycats. So diving into the first campaign we're going to cover, which is the Nightmare Eclipse uh, situation. So to kind of, again, provide an overview of this um, threat actor, it's definitely an unusual threat actor profile because, again, it's one person. It's not a group, not a state-sponsored team. By all available analysis, it's a single security researcher who's frustrated with what they perceived as unfair treatment from Microsoft and has been releasing Windows zero-day exploits with proof of concept code as an act of retaliation. Um, as previously mentioned, uh, the researcher has publicly committed to a what they called bone shattering drop on June 14th, which sits, after Patch Tuesdays happened and during weekend response windows, which are typically limited. So diving in a bit to the technical details of what these zero-day exploits are. Um, these are all post-compromise tools, so none of them give an attacker initial access to a system. What they do is take an attacker who already has a foothold, whether that be through phishing, malicious document, any other initial access vector, and dramatically increases what the attacker can accomplish. So to kind of go through these, the blue hammer is local privilege escalation. Mini Plasma is privilege escalation in the Windows kernel components. Red Sun is local privilege escalation in the Defender stack, um, and allows an attacker with low privilege to escalate to system and affects all supported Windows versions. Undefend is a defense evasion technique that targets Microsoft Defender. Um, it allows an attacker to evade Defender protections entirely. It is often paired with the Red Sun exploit for a full kill chain. Uh, Yellow Key, which is a BitLocker security bypass. So an attacker that has physical or local access can bypass BitLocker disk encryption. Green Plasma is privilege escalation, allowing shell with system permissions. And again, kind of the common attack pattern with all of these is that they're all post-compromise tools. They turn user level footholds into system level control and evade defensive products that would otherwise catch lateral movement. Uh, Detection for the unpatched Eclipse exploits has to operate at a compensating control level because the underlying flaws can't be fixed until Microsoft ships the patches for them. The Defender tampering detection is your most direct indicator. The undefend exploit specifically targets the Defender stack to disable it. So any process that's attempting to terminate Defender processes, modify Defender registry keys, or disable real-time protection should generate an immediate alert. Um, for BitLocker, obviously you just want to ensure that BitLocker startup pins and BIOS UEFI passwords are enabled across your environment. And as well as at the network layer as well. These are, again, all post-compromise, so really the best detection is preventing the initial access. So obviously things like phishing-resistant MFA, application allow listing, and email security tools all remain the primary controls for this. For the hardening response aspect of this, out-of-band patch readiness, Microsoft is likely going to ship out-of-band patches for Red Sun, Undefend, and any future exploits that this researcher may release. Um, Again, kind of referencing back to the last slide, but identity protection is really the backstop here. So again, phishing resistant MFA, that means any stolen system credentials become less useful for lateral movement. FIDO2 and passkeys, again, are the highest leverage identity control, and application allow listing. The Eclipse exploits require code execution on the endpoint first. So AppLocker, WDAC, or any equivalent application allow listing would prevent the initial code execution. Moving into the second campaign here, which is the Chrome 0-day. Uh, the technical mechanics of this are pretty direct. It's an out-of-bounds memory access in V8, which is Chrome's JavaScript engine. A user will visit a malicious or compromised website. That website serves a crafted HTML and JavaScript designed to trigger the vulnerability. And then code executes inside the Chrome sandbox. So that's the full attack. There's no clicks beyond the initial page visit, no no user interaction beyond just browsing. Um, what I want to highlight here too is the pattern, not just this individual CVE. We've had 5 actively exploited Chrome 0-days this year so far. Um, And that really reflects the reality that the browser has become one of the most consistently exploited surfaces. Your endpoints all run a browser, your users spend most of their day in a browser, increasingly your applications run in a browser. The browser is now infrastructure and it gets exploited like infrastructure. Um, there's a specific detail in the reporting that matters as well. So researchers that have assessed this exploit all agree that this likely pairs this V8 flaw with a separate sandbox escape vulnerability. The V8 flaw alone gives you code execution inside the Chrome sandbox, which has its own protections. To do any real damage, escape the sandbox and access the operating system, the attacker probably has a second exploit in their chain. It's not been confirmed what that second exploit is, but its existence suggests it's um, most likely a sophisticated threat actor. The attack chain, as kind of previously mentioned, is short and clean, which part of what makes browser 0-days so dangerous. So an attacker hosts crafted content on a website. A victim visits the site using a vulnerable Chrome version. The V8 engine processes the malicious JavaScript, hits the out-of-bounds memory bug, and the attacker gains code execution inside of the Chrome sandbox. Um, what we're inferring based on recent similar attacks is, again, the attacker has most likely a secondary exploit that they're using to escape this sandbox. Um, for example, the Memento Mori espionage campaign in October of last year used a Chrome sandbox escape in exactly this pattern. We don't know if it's the same sandbox escape that's being paired with this or a different one, but the operational pattern strongly suggests a paired chain. And something else that's kind of interesting, while they're not directly related, the Nightmare Eclipse exploits in this definitely kind of pair together to create a full kill chain. So a sophisticated actor could chain a Chrome Zero Day for initial access, and then use the Eclipse exploit for privilege escalation, and that resulting kill chain would be devastating. So the threat surface here is additive, even when the threat actors are unrelated. Detection here is mostly about prevention rather than catching it in progress, because by the time a Chrome zero-day chain executes on a user's endpoint, the window to respond is already extremely narrow. So the primary control is get Chrome updated. There is a patch available. So Chrome auto updates on browser relaunch, but if your users keep browsers open for days at a time, they may not have restarted Chrome since June 8th. Um, so forcing a restart via endpoint management would eh, again force the patches to install. Um, kind of a secondary control that can be implemented is tightening your web filtering. The most common delivery vectors for Chrome zero days are malvertising and watering hole attacks against trusted looking domains. So reputation-based filtering catches the worst of this. If you already have categories like newly observed domains or low reputation configured, um, especially if you have them configured for warn only, switch them to block only. Um, for high value targets, so executives, leadership, things like that, remote browser isolation is the highest impact control. So the browser session runs in a remote sandbox, and any exploitation uh, affects that sandbox, not the user's endpoint. These are definitely appropriate and effective tools for, again, higher value users. Um, and hardening in response is pretty similar. Again, ensuring that Chrome update enforcement is enabled, as well as configuring Chrome enterprise policies to, again, auto update or and to force minimum version requirements of Chrome. Additionally, looking at Edge and any other Chromium browsers, because most browsers are Chromium based. It's not been confirmed that this zero day affects other Chromium browsers, but that is generally a concern with Chrome zero days. Um, Again, network layer defense, so things like web filtering and DNS layer protection. These provide independent defense layers that are very effective. The last campaign we're going to cover is the SolarWinds Serve View uh, vulnerability. Um, so this CVE is a vulnerability in SolarWinds ServeView, which is a file transfer product used by many enterprises for secure file exchange. The vulnerability itself is technically a denial of service. So an unauthenticated attacker can crash the ServeView service by sending specially crafted HTTP requests. That's lower impact than full remote code execution. It's been given a CVSS score of moderate rather than critical for that reason. Um, CISA did add this to their known exploited vulnerabilities catalog and set a federal remediation deadline. Um, and the reason that they did was ServeView is on every sophisticated attacker's target list. Um, In 2024, there were ServU vulnerabilities that were used by the Clop ransomware for mass exploitation campaigns that hit hundreds of organizations. Threat actors monitor ServU specifically because it's enterprise file transfer software, meaning it's typically internet facing, typically holds sensitive data, and typically belongs to organizations with regulatory exposure that would motivate a ransom payment. So a denial of service on ServU is rarely the end goal. It's often the probe, a test of the attacker's ability to interact with the service before a more serious exploitation attempt. The technical mechanism is relatively simple. The attacker sends a malicious HTTP post request with a particular header. The server fails to handle the decompression properly, and the service will crash. Um, and again, what's most important is the historical pattern with this kind of vulnerability. Um, as I mentioned, the Clop ransomware group has been the primary mass exploiter of enterprise file transfer software for several years now. So their playbook is pretty consistent. Identify a vulnerability in widely deployed file transfer software, develop a reliable exploit, and execute coordinated mass exploitation campaigns. Um, This particular CVE is unlikely to be Clop's actual ransomware vector. Again, it's a denial of service attack, not code execution. But it tells an attacker that they can successfully interact with this particular ServU instance, which is typically the precursor to attempting a more impactful exploitation. Um, Kind of an adjacent point worth noting as well. If you have ServU in your environment, you almost certainly have other enterprise file transfer products too. Um, so things like Move It, Go Anywhere, all of these have had critical vulnerabilities in the last 18 months. And all of them deserve patch status audits this week as well. Um, and also considering maybe limiting the scope of the file transfer products used in your environment. For detection against this, the first action is the inventory check. Do you run ServU? Um, and secondly, if you do run ServU, perform version auditing to ensure that it's been patched. Obviously, there was a patch released with this. Um, Another useful detection mechanism is alerting on any ServU service crashes, restarts, or unexpected downtime. Web server log audits as well. The HTTP access logs for post requests, specifically with the content encoding deflate headers. Um, any crafted exploitation requests would be visible in these access logs. Network layer monitoring, so monitoring for any unusual traffic patterns to ServU management interfaces. So things like connection spikes, requests from unexpected geographies, or repeated connection patterns from single source IPs are all things that you'd want to be on the lookout for here. Um, Hardening in response for this, obviously the first thing would be the immediate patch deployment. Um, Secondly, internet exposure audit. So determining whether your ServU or other file transfer instances are internet facing and whether or not they need to be internet facing. Um, File transfer product consolidation. I kind of touched on this in a moment ago, but essentially fewer products in your environment means fewer patch services and fewer attack services. Monitoring resilience. So as I've mentioned in the previous slide, ensuring that ServU service monitoring and crash alerting is configured and enabled. And lastly, credential and key rotation. If you are running ServU and it is internet exposed, for the last month, I'd say rotate any service account credentials and review the API keys or service principal access associated with the system. Thank you, everyone. Are there any questions at this time?
All right. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to put them in the chat, like Bryce just said. All right. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. Our team will be sending out the slides and the recording soon. Have a great rest of your day.